because you got to look at this as a long-term play, right? If you're chasing, a 2-week event, great, you're going to make money. I mean, we have like the Sundance Film Festival, right? There's properties up in the greater Salt or the Park City area that make astronomical amount of money for that 2-week period. What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast and our Whiskey Wednesday segment with my main man, Mr. Dave Savolich. You guys, we do a couple different segments. On Wednesdays, Dave and I get to sit down. Dave kind of cruises the internet, finds some topics we're going to talk about, some questions you guys send in. We're going to get them answered. That's my favorite part of Whiskey Wednesday, actually, is the questions. I love the questions. You do a good job as a producer with stuff, but I like the questions.
I mean, I can't make up the questions. You know what I mean?
No, that's good. So you guys keep sending those questions in, right? It's one of those things that you guys comment on the post or post or comment on the platform you're watching or listening on. We pull those questions off of there, but it's really easy to send in a question to support@vodacy.com as well, and we'll make sure we answer it on an upcoming episode. So, what do we got today?
Well, it's
hey, before we start, I want to see how your intro is. We're right at the intro. Dave said he was going to do the intro today, you guys, and so I said, all right, you got the mic, do it. Start it off.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast here by Shawn Moore and our Whiskey Wednesday edition. Thanks for joining. As always, we want you guys to take this serious. We want you to listen wherever the best.
I'm going to start drinking early. I'm drinking early.
How was that? That's pretty good. I mean, that's the first time, dude.
It was the first time.
Listen, I got to practice out of it.
Do you think I try to get like the?
I think there's definitely totally. You have to.
I changed my tone a little bit.
You have to. You have to have a different tone. My daughter teaches Orange Theory Fitness. She's a coach there, right?
Yeah.
And she's normal talking. I was going, "Hey, welcome to Orange Theory Fitness." So she has her fitness voice.
All right, we all have
she dials it in.
We have our announcer voices, our radio voice, our podcast voice.
Exactly.
So,
all right. You notice how I changed?
You did good, yeah.
You notice how I changed? I was like all nice and normal, and then, "Hey, welcome to the." It's like an announcer for a boxing match or something.
All right, well,
or a rodeo. Let's talk about rodeos. It's
rodeo.
It's rodeo season.
I'm going to rodeo tonight.
Yes. It's rodeo season here in Utah. It's actually July is a fun month for Utah. We get the 4th of July. And we also get the 24th, which is Pioneer Day, when they first settled the Utah Valley. So it's kind of our independence, and 24th is awesome. So a lot of parades, a lot of amazing rodeos. The Ogden Days Rodeo, Pioneer Days in Ogden is one of the top rodeos in the country. Yeah. And it's awesome.
Yeah. You want to talk about announcers. If you have never gone to a rodeo and listened to a rodeo announcer, I mean, it is awesome. And you don't ever want to show up late for a rodeo because those announcers are awesome. And I'm going to the Ogden Pioneer Days. Yeah. And then Utah also has Days of 47. There's some big rodeos here. Yeah. Pioneer Days is top 5 rodeo in the nation.
Right here in Ogden,
Right
Utah.
Here in Ogden. It's a big deal. It's fun. But man, you talk about the best cowboys, the best cowgirls, the best stock. The announcers, the clowns. I mean, it is an event, and you guys know probably I love rodeos. This is one of the best of the best. And
that announcer, I'm telling you, is unbelievable.
Right.
He literally, it's worth just going for the first 20 minutes to just listen to him talk about the flag and introduce, the rodeo and the events. I mean, he is awesome.
Oh yeah, I mean, you want to get fired up about God, your country, family, self-reliance, perseverance. Like, go listen to these rodeo announcers. You're like, it's like motivational speaker on steroids.
It is.
I love it.
It's exactly what we talk about here on Vodacy.
Yeah, don't. You know what I mean? Don't try to. We can't do him justice. We can't do those guys justice.
That was mine. That was my voice. That was my change.
Okay. All right. Good. Well,
Hey, a little trivia. Well, not trivia, but kind of fun fact. So the Ogden Days rodeo is in, down kind of off 17th Street in Ogden, if you know Ogden, but it's right next to Larnfar Park. There's a swimming pool there. And do you know what famous movie?
Yeah, I love it.
Was filmed? The Sandlot. The famous, scene where the little boy fakes like he's, drowning to get a kiss from the lifeguard is right there.
Right there.
I mean, you walk right past it to go to the rodeo. And a side note, when I was a kid, I used to take swimming lessons there. And the water was so cold. My mom would drop us off at like 8 in the morning, and about 10% of the time we would just, when she'd leave, we'd stay out front and we never went to swim.
Because it was too cold
because
for
it
you?
was so cold.
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
she never knew. I told her the other day.
Coming from the guy that has a blanket and a heater under his desk.
Exactly.
I could see why you didn't get in the water.
Yeah. So I told my mom the other day and she's like, all these things I learned about you that I never knew about when, so anyway.
It's awesome.
That's great. Well, let's dive into a couple hot topics. This is something that kind of came into us here at Vodacy, which was interesting. Jacob got a call from an acquaintance and was buying a property. And Jacob he's not a member of Odyssey, but just said, hey, listen, I'm thinking about buying a property. Would you consider kind of helping me out a little bit just as a friend? And so he's like, well, what are you doing today? And how have you evaluated the property and so forth? And he bought and was part of another program. This acquaintance of Jacob's. And so he was kind of going through what his process was or what he was being taught. And I thought it was so interesting that he literally was taught to go to Rentalizer, go to Airbnb and AirDNA and just put the address in and see what it popped out. And it was crazy. It was like, the property was like $350,000 acquisition price, and it was projecting he was going to make like $150,000. And so I guess for me, it was like, are we really naive enough to think as a population, as an investor, that it really is that easy and that that's all there is to it? And that like, we're just going to buy a property and we're going to make that kind of money off it. Like it was just like unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, right?
Yeah.
And Jacob's our acquisitions manager. So he understands underwriting. He understands a $350,000 property making $150,000 in gross revenue is a really good investment. They're very hard to come by. I'm not going to say it's impossible to find those, but it's not very common. Right. I mean, that's a phenomenal investment. The reality is, and also Jacob knew this, the reality was, because that's what he does right for us. That's who he runs our acquisitions department. And he was like, this thing's going to make maybe $25,000 to $30,000 in gross revenue on the medium side, maybe possibly pushing it to 50 or 60 on the top side, which can still be a good investment on the top side of that market, but nowhere near what his buddy was going to project. Right. And so, and to your question, have we become conditioned that it's that easy? Yeah, we have, right? Yeah. It's why all the marketers out there, our marketing teams and the agencies that we work with say, hey, listen, you got to quit talking about how hard this is. You got to quit talking about how long this is going to take and how detailed this is, because nobody wants to buy that. Nobody wants to hear that. Yeah. And because that is how we've been conditioned, is that there's an easy button. You can buy a software tool and it's going to spit out exact numbers for you and you go write checks. Now, the sad part about that is, sometimes they're right. Yeah. Sometimes they're not. And when they're not, you write a check on a property that you think you're going to be making money on, and all of a sudden you're not. Yeah. It's a big deal for a lot of people, right? Yeah. Not a lot of people don't have just piles of cash sitting around, and they're buying these as investments. They're saving up for them. They're waiting to save up for that down payment. They're doing everything they can to acquire these properties with the hopes of the income potential that it has. And when that income potential is nowhere near what you thought it was, and you actually have to write checks every month and you're losing money, that's where it becomes sad. But there's a responsibility also for that buyer, right? It's not, that's, you better understand the underwriting, and you probably should pause if you think it's too good to be true, or it was too easy to come by. Right. Because if it was that easy to come by, and if it was that, and it's too good to be true, at least dive deeper. There's some home runs out there. There's some really good properties, but man, when I see a home run, I mean, you want to talk about double, triple, quadruple checking your underwriting is when you see those too good to be true deals. Right. And we're not conditioned to do that, unfortunately. And it's sad. I mean, we talk about the same thing all the time. A lot of these topics come up a lot, and, and we're really, we're really diligent about our underwriting. We take a lot of time. We're going to look at it. We're very conservative too, right? We're really conservative investors at this stage in the game. And so, there's other people that are willing to take more risk. But if you're going to take a bigger risk, you should know you're taking a bigger risk, not thinking, holy crap, I'm going to be doing, this is awesome. And by the way, I did follow a course on underwriting. If it's not if your underwriting is not taking you 45, 50 minutes per property, you're probably not underwriting it correctly, because I underwrite thousands of properties and it still takes me a half an hour to underwrite a property, at least a minimum. And I've done it thousands of times.
Right. Yeah. Good. All right. Moving on. the Olympics going on, one of my favorite times of the year. I love the Olympics.
Yeah.
We talked several times about March Madness and the Olympics and just a great, patriotism and everything. Well, it's obviously in Paris this year, and it was interesting. Airbnb is debuting an Olympic ad. And it's this is the ad. It says, "Why stay in a hotel on a touristy side of Paris?" So they're really getting involved in saying, "Hey guys, like, don't stay in a hotel. Don't be a tourist. Like, stay in an Airbnb and experience the world, experience the local, culture, experience." So, it's mainstream and it's big time when they're putting all these ads out about, hey, stay in here. And I think you're going to find a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people are going to stay in hotels, are going to be booked, but you're going to find a lot of people that are going to be staying in Airbnbs during the Olympics.
Yeah, no question. I mean, and you just alluded to it. It's just it's a testament to how mainstream short-term rentals have become. That they're a preferred accommodation choice. I mean, if you're running ads for the Olympics, those are not cheap ads, right? Vrbo is running ads in the Super Bowl, and the reason they're able to do that is because those platforms are making a lot of money on this asset class, and the reason they're making a lot of money is the demand has skyrocketed. Right? People are like, the short-term rental game's dead. Well, go look at how much money is being spent on it. It's not dead. It's mainstream. And it's still dominated by individual investors. They're the ones who own the inventory. Yeah. And so it's a really exciting asset class. This is just more testament to its mainstream. There's, the fact that they're running ads for the Olympics. They're running ads specific on the Super Bowl. Very expensive ad time, right? And these companies aren't dumb, right? They only do that if they get a return on that investment, and they only get a return if there's a massive amount of people that are willing to go stay in those types of properties, and they know that demand is huge for short-term rentals specifically. And so it's exciting, and I think it just is more validation that it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and Utah just got a big announcement. We just got to 2034.
Did they make it official?
Winter Olympics.
Was it today?
2:30 in the morning. Yep.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be today that they were going to announce it. So okay, I hadn't heard that. That's awesome.
we officially got it for 2034. So 9.5 years. And so what do you buy a short-term rental because of a big event like that coming? No. Yeah. I mean, I don't.
No, I would not chase one individual event for sure, no question.
And you'll book it out for 4 weeks probably, but I don't think you invest in an area just for 4 weeks, even though you can make a good amount of money.
There's a waterfall trickle down effect
after
when, with the economies even leading up to it, after all those different things. We've already seen that here in Utah. I would not chase and go buy properties for a specific event like the Olympics. However, that those areas might be viable for you because you got to look at this as a long-term play, right? If you're chasing, a 2-week event, great, you're going to make money. I mean, we have like the Sundance Film Festival, right? There's properties up in the Greater Salt or the Park City area that make astronomical amount of money for that 2-week period, right? And it's great, but you're not going to invest in an area that's not going to sustain your short-term rental long-term, right? And so we need to make sure that we're making long-term decisions that make sense for our portfolio. And so could it be an area that I look at? Absolutely. I would look at it, but it needs to make sense right now. And then those things are kind of bonuses along the way.
Right. Yeah. Good. Skift, an online travel site and podcast group. I don't know if you've heard of them before. This information is from them, but increased travel for the 4th of July holiday this year over last year for short-term rentals is up 15%, which is awesome. They kind of dives in. The article talks a little bit about why do they believe it's up, and it really comes down to the experience. People, they want to grill out, they want their own privacy, they want pools, they want to have their own fireworks in areas that allow fireworks. The other thing that I thought was interesting is they talked about the change from years ago to now, even in this last year, mid-sized cities are showing a increase in short-term rental usage and population versus the big cities. Yeah. And they attributed that to two things. One, overseas travel hasn't quite got back after COVID. And then obviously regulations, and they stated New York City. New York City, the outer areas in, big city areas are getting lots of short-term rental stays, and the big cities are kind of declining because lots of that to do with regulations. And we've known that.
Yeah.
That's not a surprise, but
yeah. And I think that this is where when you segment hospitality as well, like big cities, a lot of people stay in hotels.
Yeah.
Short-term rentals are fairly regulated in the big urban cities. Like the big cities, they're really regulated, but also those big cities have a lot of options when it comes to hotels and the big hotel chains and that still is really convenient for a lot of times for business travelers, even visitors coming into the big city. And so I think that is also, gets lost on, the big urban centers are declining, and they're kind of staying level. One, they're expensive to buy into, right? To buy in any major city in the U.S. is really expensive. So the revenue that you're going to generate versus the acquisition cost, it's not real attractive for an investor. So you don't see a lot of inventory growth there, but also, like you mentioned, regulations are really strict in those areas. So so there's another roadblock for investors to go in and build inventory in those markets. The mid-sized cities have a lot of, they're easier to get into as far as inventory and finding properties that people would like to stay in. You're not competing as much. You still are competing with hotels, depending on the type of property you get, but sometimes they're a little bit more spread out. And so you can get on the outskirts of them, and there's other things to do that are bringing people into the area outside of just the business stuff, right? A lot of if you think of a lot of mid-sized cities, you end up having a lot of recreational activities that are close. Maybe, like different things to do that bring people in, and family travelers. Short-term rentals are, usually less regulations in some of those cities, and so it makes sense. The stats make sense. The stat that is kind of getting that 14% increase on the 4th of July traffic this year, that still continues to surprise me, because when you talk about a 14% increase on 15% increase on the amount of dollars that are already being spent and the amount of demand that's already out there, I mean, eventually that stuff's got to level off. And it almost does still surprise me, as much as I love short-term rentals, that it continues to grow at that pace, right? Early on stages, you see massive explosive growth. You're seeing, 20%, 15% year over year growth. When we're sustaining that growth over these major holiday times, I mean, I think last, if I remember right, the growth over the Christmas holiday, over that, Christmas and New Year's holiday, I think was right around that as well, year over year. It was around a 12 to 14% growth rate, if I remember correctly. And that's still really kind of shocking to me that we're seeing that year over year growth, and which is awesome. That just, again, it shows that the demand is there, right? It's validation that the consumer really enjoys short-term rentals. And I think it's validation that hosts are doing a really good job of continuing to raise the bar, continuing to provide great experiences for their, those bad hosts that we kind of sometimes talk about, that they're just, they've got a place, they're putting used furniture in it, that they found at garage sales, those are really kind of weeding themselves out. Like they're not out there. And I think that because the hosts and investors like us are raising the bar and providing great properties with great experiences, the consumer is saying, hey, listen, we like what you're doing here. We like this option. And I think that is fueling a lot of that growth where it's just become a mainstream accommodation choice for consumers, but also it's a very economical way to travel. And I think as dollars getting tightened up and inflation's out there, I think that people assume and say, well, listen, travel's going to go down. People aren't going to spend the money. And a lot of these short-term rental destinations that are fueling this growth are drivable destinations from some of your major metro areas. And so people can drive. They can drive with families. They can drive with multiple families. They can split these properties up. They don't have to eat out every day because most properties have full kitchens. So they can eat together. They can grill. They can save a lot of money from going out to eat. They can save a lot of money by splitting up these properties with multiple families. If you're paying $400 a night on a 3-bedroom property, you can split that up with 2 families, right? And a couple kids. And so I think that because of that, the consumer is like, man, I like this. I can still go on vacation, but it's saving me a little bit of money versus jumping on a plane, maybe going to Hawaii, going to the Caribbean, doing some of that stuff and staying in a hotel and eating out every day. They can have a really nice vacation for half the cost. Right. And I think that's another thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think is fueling that decision of the consumer to continue to want to spend money in this segment of the hospitality.
Well, and I think too, one thing that's a little overlooked too is most people are, with their menu and their food, they have the kind of their routine. And so if they're not used to eating out and they're staying in a hotel and they got to eat out, that gets old. And so a lot of families, I know our family's like that, we love being able to cook and go to the store and buy the things that we like to eat every day, and sandwiches and lunch and breakfast, and then we eat out for dinner and stuff. But I think that's a huge convenience for people. Then the other thing is, I think, is obviously, without getting into too much detail, but people at the end of the night, they just go to their separate hotel room. This way they can hang out, they can watch a movie, they can play games, they can sit out by the fire. There's just, but you said it right. Those who are creating this experience are going to see the uptick in their properties. Yeah.
And like you said, the consumer is appreciating that elevated experience.
Yeah, right? For sure. Yeah. All right, let's take a peek at maybe a question or two. Your favorite part of
my favorite part. Let's do the program.
Questions. So this came up on a call actually that I took this week. What do you think about turning your existing house into a short-term rental? What do you need to consider? So in this particular case, this happens quite a bit. When, let's say, you have a parent or a grandparent that passes away and you inherit their house. Yep. And maybe it's free and clear. It's a property that now you didn't have to purchase and you have it, and you're like, okay, hey, let's turn it into a short-term rental. And so, which in a lot of cases, I think it's a great idea, but there are some things you got to be, aware of and make sure that you're doing it the right way.
Yeah, and we get this question. Yeah, you just had it sounds like, but we've had this question before of somebody navigating that choice of whether that maybe maybe instead of selling their house and they're going to move up, they want to turn an existing home in. Maybe they inherit a home, whatever the case may be. They've got this house that was used as a residential home and turning it into short-term rental. Sometimes it works great. Sometimes it doesn't work great. And so you're going to look at it and you're going to underwrite the area, the investability of that area, the rules and the regulations. And, people are always like, how do I make this decision? I say, you make it as if you were going to buy that house as a short-term rental, right? Yeah. Is you say, hey, if I was going to go buy this house as a short-term rental, would this work? Would this be viable for me? What is my income potential? And so you make that decision based on that knowledge you gain from the underwriting, and you're going to really underwrite it. And sometimes you'll find that, man, this is going to work really, really well. But sometimes you're going to find that it probably isn't going to work, or maybe you can't make it work because the regulations aren't going to let you do it. The zoning, the licensing, the permitting is not there for you. And so the way you make that decision is you underwrite it the same way you would as if you were going to buy that exact house, right? The only difference is you don't have that acquisition cost in there in the numbers, right? But you can put in what you would maybe sell it for, because there's an opportunity cost. If you have a house, you're either going to turn it into something as a long-term rental, a short-term rental, or whatever else, or you're going to sell it and use that money to go put it into somewhere else, right? Yeah. So whatever you're going to sell that property for, put those numbers in there, because you might say, well, this property is going to sell for $1 million, but my grandma has had it forever and left it to me and I don't know anything on it. Well, it's still $1 million asset, right? So I see a lot of times the mistake is you don't put an acquisition cost in the underwriting because you already own it. And you need to say, well, that's still worth X amount of money. I need to put that in there and see what kind of return I'm getting on that asset, right? Yeah. It's like we talk about return on equity a lot of times. It's like, hey, listen, what is the return you're getting on equity? Maybe keeping it as a short-term rental is a great use of that equity and that asset and that property. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's better placed somewhere else or as a short-term rental somewhere else, right? And so the answer to that is you do it the exact same way as if you're buying that asset.
Yeah. And this is kind of a second question, but kind of added on to it. Same if you were building, let's say you had a lot and you were building versus buying a short-term rental. I mean, kind of the same process, right?
Exactly.
Go through the same evaluation.
Yeah, you're gonna evaluate it the exact same way, right? You're gonna underwrite it the exact same way. The benefit of building is you can build it how you want to. You can put multiple suites in it. You can build it as as a short-term rental, like set it up to where it's really a purpose-built type of a home, multiple master suites, a 1-to-1 bedroom count, bathroom counts ratio, right? Having some owner's closets and some places you can lock up cleaning supplies that the guests don't have to get into. Right. And you make it really flow nicely as a short-term rental. That's a really great benefit, right? Because it adds and elevates the customer experience that we're talking about. Yeah. But as far as underwriting, it's no different. You're saying, hey, look, what's my all-in cost on lot, build, everything else? And when you're building, you got to build in a contingency of at least 10 to 15% because you might go over that budget. And so you build in an extra 10 or 15% on your build cost minimum, and then you put it, run the numbers, put it in there, and compare it to existing properties that you could buy. And so it's it's decisions, right? We're making decisions. And when we make decisions, the more data we have, the more information we have, we make better decisions. And the better questions we ask, the better information we're going to get back, right? And so really just understanding how to run those numbers, like we were talking about at the very beginning with Jacob's guy, figure out how to actually run those numbers so you make really good decisions down the line.
Yeah. Good. Well, buddy, that's a great episode today.
All right.
I know it went by fast, but I'm telling you, we covered a lot of ground.
We did cover a lot of ground. Yeah, you did a good job.
I think the listeners are going to like this one.
I hope so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. We'll see. Hope you guys give us feedback on Dave's.
Hey, if Dave
should start the show off, or if I should continue.
I know you guys would give good feedback.
Do you want to end the show?
Let's
do you want to see how you end? Do you want to end the show?
No. Just make sure you guys share the show, send us an email, like it, give us a thumbs up on any forum that you're listening to or watching. And again, as always, I like to tell you.
Tell them.
I just can't do it like you, dude. I'm going to turn it and like we always say, Shawn, I want you to take it out and end it with that. Go.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry you guys had to go through that. Dave and I are kind of having fun today. All right. We are going to wrap it up. We know how valuable your time is, so we're not going to waste any more of it. I hope you got value, at least in the middle of the show, right? And so if you did get value, share the show. We appreciate that. We don't run ads. We don't run any sponsorships. And so the only way this show grows is if you guys share it. If you know somebody else that wants to walk into the short-term rental game with their eyes wide open, share the show. We'd love to have them be a part of this conversation as well. If you have questions, email them in, support@odyssey.com, or post them in the comments on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And while you're there, give us a thumbs up, leave us a review. Those things help us. And the final, most important thing, Dave, at the end of every episode is you guys pick one thing you can do today, start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.